Welcome again to dentReviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Moondrop Blessing 2. This is another Chinese-made earphone. I got this from Airpieces Audio, which is a distributor of Shenzhen. I had a really good experience. Both of their customer services have been great. This is the packaging here. They have some anime drawings with the diagram of the earphone on the back. Another Moondrop package here with the simple logo and a nice smooth background. It's very nice style, kind of a minimal logo design. Inside you have here a Moondrop themed case. It's got an embossed logo. It's kind of a pleather. It's not real leather. It's nice though. I like it. It's nice and it's not nice. It's nice because it's decent quality. It's very spacious for the earphones, so it's soft and fairly rigid. The downside is that it's not small, so it's not going in your pocket, and even in a bag it's a little bit chonky, but that's the case. It has a section for your ear tips if you want, or you could even wrap the cable up in here and leave the earphones here, which for tangling purposes, I'll get into that in a little bit. Here are the earphones here in this foam piece. The box has some basic logo paperwork here with the manual and some cards in Chinese I don't understand. Just a guide telling you how to wear them, and again I can't really read it. It's in another language. This box here houses the Airline Adapter. It comes with an Airline Adapter, the ear tips, and the cable, I believe. So you'll have your ear tips, your Airline Adapter, and then the cable. Now the cable for the Moondrop is very similar on some of their models. This one is almost identical to the Starfield cable that I reviewed. It's just a different color, and that's about it. So if you've seen that review, it's basically a really nice right angle connector. A little bit of strain relief, nothing special. It's translucent plastic, which I absolutely love. Very narrow, so it should fit most cases that aren't too deep. It's got the 2-pin connector, translucent plastic as well. It's a nice copper style with a simple braid. It feels like it's relatively durable. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing amazing. It has sort of a do-it-yourself kind of local business kind of handmade feel to it. I don't really care for the big Moondrop. I just now realize that maybe that's supposed to be a Moondrop. But I don't really care for how bulky it is. I'd like something slimmer, but in reality it hasn't really bothered me. It hasn't gotten in the way. I don't like it. Comes with a little Velcro tie here to hold it together. Now I actually take this Velcro tie and I turn it into a cord lock, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then lastly, it has the guided ear molds so that when you're wearing it, it goes around your ear, which is really nice. I like that. It makes it comfortable, and it's just a nice feature. All kind of your standard ear tips. Nothing really special to go over here. It's just simple round ear tips. The earpieces themselves, these are incredibly beautiful. I mean, if you haven't noticed already, I'm a sucker for translucent plastic. Well, these are translucent plastic. In fact, you can see everything in them. On the back side, you have the logo on one piece and the plain side on the other piece with a vent hole. And they're very well molded to kind of shape your ear. And let me get up close here. You can see they're translucent. Now, that large cone there, that's the dynamic driver. And then if you look here, from the side, there are 2 balanced armature drivers, and you have 3D molded tubes. These are 3D printed earphones. So all of these tube canals here for the sound to go through are made by 3D printing, which is pretty crazy. And if you can see really small here, let's see if I can get really close. There's actually 2 resistors right there. So I think laying flat along the plane of the back piece there is a circuit. And that circuit is probably to help control the frequencies, like an RC circuit. To control the bass response, treble response, things like that. So it's a pretty wide nozzle. I think that's probably the biggest problem that some people might have, is that the nozzle itself is a little bit on the chonk side, but it's necessary because you can see it has all 3 vent sound holes coming out the same spot there. It looks like what I'm almost positive that's a Knowles style driver filter. I think it's like an automotive filter you'd see, and then the other 2 holes don't have anything in them. Anyway, sorry for the focus, but basically that is the design. I think it's a very beautiful, very nice style. With this design, the only problem I could see some people having is the fit. The fit is a little bit, like I said, a thick nozzle. So if you have narrow ear canals, or ear openings, you might find that this nozzle is just a little bit on the girthy side, and that put pressure on your canal, and you might find that uncomfortable. Now, I lucked out, and for me personally, these are probably the most comfortable earphones I've ever worn. I'd say they're even more comfortable than the Starfield, which are pretty comfortable. What they do for me that works really well is they shape to my inner ear extremely well, and the nozzle being a little bit thicker than normal helps to seal the ear tip so that I get a lot less noise leakage and less trouble just trying to fit them in general. So if you get the right size ear tip, for me these work really well, but they are fairly on the large size for universal earphones. In fact, they have a lot more appearance that's kind of akin to a custom earphone. But if its size is concerning, most of it is thickness. So, this piece here is going to be sticking out of your ear. However, again, it is a thick nozzle and a little bit bulky here. So to each, it's going to be like a matter of trying it out, seeing if it fits, and hopefully it works for you. If not, it might just be a little bit of pressure and a little bit of comfort issues there. So the cable here, just like the Starfield, you place these so that the cable plugs into the two pins and goes back around. So this would be your left earpiece, and that helps you to keep the noise of the cable from vibrations and things like that. Now, I actually take this Moondrop Velcro and I just wrap it around tightly after I put them around my ears to make a cord lock, and then I can slide that up, kind of cinch it under my neck. And for me personally, that's very comfortable. I will show you one thing with the ear tips, just because these are a little bit unique, but there's not really a nozzle that they attach to in the sense that they snap on or go over anything. They really just go on top of this thick nozzle, and you just kind of push them and get them tight, and that's it. So you can see, kind of girthy, but with the right ear tip, I think they work really well. What's more important though, and we're going to get into that now, is the sound quality. How do these things sound? Well, like I said in my Starfield review, these are probably a little bit closer to what I consider true neutral sound than most earphones. The Starfield have that slightly more maybe Harman target. The original Blessing 2, which these are, have a little bit less bass than the Starfield. They're a little bit more close to the IEF target, or the, I don't want to say etymotic, they're not that lean, but they're just not as bass heavy as the current Harman target or the Starfield. Moondrop does have its own, I think it's like the VSTD virtual something something target that they go by, and I think it's a pretty good target. It shares a lot in common with etymotic in the treble. It's got a little bit less of a bump at the 3 kilohertz region, but otherwise it's similar in the treble, with the roll-off being kind of similar, but in the bass is a little bit weightier, a little bit thicker. And I do prefer that. I think etymotic is a little bit lean in the bass. I'm more fond of like the ER4XR than I am the SR, and they all sound phenomenal, and some have better treble, whatever, but the bass is just not thick enough on most etymotics. It's not full enough, at least in the low end. With the XR, you get a little bit of that bleed into the mids. These don't have that. So the bass on these is pretty well isolated into the sub-bass region and the low bass, and not really up into any of the mid bass. So these end up having a gorgeous mid section. I keep showing you the cable. These sound great. No, these sound great. The treble response on these is not perfect, but it's by far one of the closest to perfect that I've ever heard. There's a slight peak at the 8 kilohertz region, and a slight, or actually a fairly good dip at the 10 kilohertz and above, that kind of takes away a little bit of that airiness that you might have with that perfect response. And then for me personally, after a lot of listening, I find that I do actually prefer that slight bit more of the etymotic target, where you have 2 to 3 kilohertz, a little bit more raised. I don't even think it has to be etymotic levels, but I think it's a little bit ever so slightly recessed on these, so that the treble takes on a very relaxing sound, but in my opinion, a little bit less presence than realistic. However, I'm talking very relative compared to an etymotic or something similar. We're talking 2 decibels. I mean, nothing serious, and only in a small range. So Treble response on these is fantastic. Bass response, it extends very deeply. The dynamic driver has some pretty good texture. It's not the best I've ever heard, but it's very good. I'd compare it to like the JVC FDX01. I think the FDX01 has better bass than these. Not only is it slightly higher in quantity, the attack and the texture and just the clarity and quality of the bass in each hit and each tone, I think is better on the JVC, almost noticeably better than these. However, despite the fact that the JVC has more bass as a whole, these sound a little bit fuller. There's just something about the drivers and the way it's tuned that these have a little bit more of a warm, relaxing sound than the JVC, whereas the JVC has more of a lean sound. It's very capable and it can hit the bass notes deep and tight when it's needed, but in a direct comparison, at first, I would call these warmer than the JVC in a weird way. So, bass wise, it's pretty linear throughout the whole response from bass to mid to treble, but the bass is a little bit on the light side in terms of sub bass. Now, if the treble on these were perfect, I'd say maybe that's not the case, but these do have a slight like forwardness in the, I don't know what region it would be, 4 to 8 kilohertz region maybe, and they lend it kind of gives the sound a little bit of a raspiness to it, which just in my opinion makes the balance of the treble and bass a little bit leaning towards treble. So the Dusk have been released recently, and those kind of remediate that, and they make the bass a little bit more in line with the treble, in my opinion, and this a little bit more balanced. The Dusk, I think, overall are probably a slightly more neutral tuning than these, but if you don't want that extra bass, if you prefer a leaner sounding earphone, these do give a little bit more treble presence than the Dusk, and they have a little bit more of an open sound overall rather than, I guess you could say, slightly warmer, although I don't think the Dusk is a warm earphone. But relatively speaking, these are slightly warmer, slightly leaner, and the Dusk is slightly warmer. So, great balance, great frequency response, not perfect, but very good. Technicality-wise, these are very good. They have a very nice wide stereo image with a lot of depth too. So it's very nice in how it lays out the instruments. Things are very distinct, more so than the Starfield, and definitely more so even probably than the JVC. The JVC has benefits in other ways, but these are just very good at imaging, at placing things in the sound field, and having like a nice transient attack. Like little treble things have a very sharp precision to them. So that's kind of the response in a nutshell. Overall, it's very neutral. It's very comfortable. It has reasonable accessories, a nice case, nice box, which to each his own. I don't really care about boxes. I wish they'd all just come in, sturdy, small cardboard boxes. But if you like a nice experience, it's got a decent box. It's just a good package. Is it worth $320? The Starfield actually makes that an interesting question, because if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend more than $200, I'd say the Starfield are every bit as good as these for the price. Now, if you're critical and you really want something that's more resolving, has a better image, and just a little bit more neutrality, then I think these are better. And if that's your goal, absolutely, these are worth $320. However, I would just preface that by saying that the Dusk is very, very similar to these, but with what I consider a slightly improved bass response. So if you prefer that tonality, they're the same price, $320 or so. So I would actually probably prefer the Dusk. In fact, I'm keeping the Dusk and I'm not keeping the Blessing 2. But anyhow, I'll give you a big comparison of all the earphones that I'm discussing, the JVC, the Blessing, the Dusk, etc. in another video. But if you have any questions at all, please let me know. And as always, thank you guys for watching.